Well, joining the conversation here in Washington is former Obama White House Deputy Press Secretary Bill Burton. Bill, thanks for joining us. Good to see you back in D.C. So Nikki Haley, she has been siphoning somewhere between 30, maybe 40% in certain primaries of the Donald Trump potential universe of votes. Does the Biden campaign think that those voters are gettable for them?
Well, if you look at the New York Times poll over the weekend, about 2/3 of Haley's supporters actually voted for Biden in 2020, and only 9% of them supported Trump. So I actually think that there is some real consolidation to be had. And how Trump treats Nikki Haley, I think, will matter a lot in whether or not he even has access to those 9% of voters who supported him last time around.
And for Joe Biden's campaign, when you look at the results tonight, obviously, he more or less swept. We'll talk about America Samoa later. We're not going to talk about that right now. But he more or less swept. At the same time, we know that there are some things happening underneath the surface here. When it comes to the key Democratic constituencies, Black voters, Latino voters, younger voters, now potentially Arab and Muslim voters, there's a problem. And does the Biden campaign, do you get the sense that they acknowledge, they're aware of the scope of that problem?
I do think that they sense the enormity of the situation that they're dealing with the many groups inside of his coalition. But, you know, I think that you can't look at any of these groups as monoliths, right? Like Black voters, I think there's a lot of persuasion that's going to have to be done in the Black community this time around before you get to get out the vote effort in that community. And with the Muslim voters, you know, one thing to consider is that even though people are angry now or having strong emotions now, like this race is a choice between two people. And at the end of the day, Joe Biden is going to be so much better for our relationships in the world and how we're dealing with Israel than President Trump would be. And finally, you know, Israel may not be the issue that it is in the fall that it is right now, right? We're closer and closer to a ceasefire. It may not be in the headlines at all.
Earlier, just as we were coming on, Bakari was talking about the third-party component of this, the RFKs, the Jill Steins, all the others, Dean Phillips, whoever. That's a real factor, it seems. How worried are you?
Very. I'm very worried. Cornel West as well. You know, in 2016, Hillary Clinton lost in large part because 8% of voters chose third-party candidates in that race. And Joe Biden won in 2020 when less than 2% of voters chose third-party candidates. And so that margin, that 6-point difference, could be very consequential for Joe Biden. So I think that they need to take the threat seriously. They need to neutralize some of these campaigns, and they need to get out in front of making sure that they have, you know, their positive vision for America on their front foot.
Bakari, who are you most worried about?
So I slightly disagree with my friend to my right, because I don't think that it's a two-person race. I've always said this. I think that it's a race between Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and the couch. And so my biggest fear is the couch.
Sure.
And I think that there are a lot of voters. I mean, I don't anticipate there are going to be many Arab or Muslim voters that jump over Joe Biden to vote for Donald Trump. But there may be a large amount that stay home. There aren't a lot of Black voters there is no planet on which Donald Trump is going to get 20+% of Black voters. I don't care who at the New York Times. I don't know.
Okay, we'll come back to this.
I don't know what they smoking. I don't know when they smoking it. I don't know what poll they think they doing or whomever's doing it. There is no planet that Donald Trump is going to get 20+% of Black voters. It's just not going to happen. But some of those Black voters may stay home. And that's going to matter in places like Detroit, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Clark County. So I'm more worried about the couch than I am anything else.
So RFK Jr., just today, he got enough signatures to get on the Nevada ballot, a key battleground state. There's a real question about who he hurts. Who does he hurt? Is it Biden? Is it Trump?
He will take from both sides. I had the opportunity to interview him for an article, and I went to a opening of one of his campaign in New Jersey. And the crowd was mixed. There were some that were Biden supporters. I spoke with many who were Republicans who said they're going to cross over and vote for him because of the way he was about COVID and about vaccines and many of the issues he stands for. He's going to pull some Republicans and some Democrats. And so I think he has someone to watch. His campaign has slowly been working on the very difficult part of ballot access. It's not so much about who can do great in the polls right now, but who can get on the ballots, and they've been slowly doing so. I think Bakari is onto something with regard to the couch vote, because what we saw in our early CNN exit polls tonight in Virginia and North Carolina, of Republican primary voters, 30% to 40% say they're not MAGA people. They're not MAGA Republicans. So those are Donald Trump voters. And Donald Trump is really going to have to work to bring those people into the fold. He said tonight that's what his plan is. That's what he wants to do, is unify the party. But those are the kind of people he's really going to have to court.
You know, can I just add in one real quick thing? Because we're talking about the group of black voters. I come representing the Puerto Rican and Cuban delegation. If we were on Chappelle's show, you guys would get that joke. And so 62.1 million Latinos in this country. Donald Trump in the third GOP debate that happened in November in Miami, what did he do? He had a rally in Hialeah, Florida, where 5,000 people attended. Take this group serious, like come bearing that message, because the Latino voters and the messaging on some of these platforms in Spanish, the Trump campaign is doing that right now on the ground. The Biden campaign's got a lot of work to do in that regard.
All right, guys, everyone stand by. Bill Burton, thank you very much for joining us on this. Republicans pretty concerned about this, and I have to just say, I mean, the idea of comparing that kind of hatefulness to Martin Luther King Jr. is just really, it's beyond the pale. It's beyond the pale.
For Donald Trump, they're both black, and so that is about where he got that caricature from, or similarity from. But Mark Robinson is a Holocaust denier. He said the gays are the end of the civilization. We talked about him calling school shooting victims prostitutes. He says shootings are karma for abortion, although he actually had one in an earlier part of his life, or paid for one in an earlier part of his life. And he called the civil rights movement a communist plot. What just happened tonight in North Carolina is it changed the map a little bit for Democrats nationwide. I believe that Democrats are going to spend a lot more money in a place like North Carolina, where you have a fabulous candidate in Josh Stein, who's the Attorney General, who has been doing those things in the African-American community, and who is literally Jewish, running against an anti-Semite. And it just puts North Carolina squarely in the map. In fact, Joe Biden will be able to just kind of flow with the wings of Josh Stein. And I think you're going to see a lot of those dollars that we otherwise would spend in a place like Georgia being spent in a place like North Carolina, but it expands the map.
So you think that Georgia maybe slips back a little bit in terms of the priorities, and North Carolina moves up?
I think of all of the swing states, Georgia's probably at the bottom, or gives Republicans the best chance to flip that swing state. I think North Carolina now becomes a state that is right there on the playing field with Georgia, and you're just going to have to, you know this better than I. Somebody has to sit in a room and figure out where the dollars are spent. And if you're looking at Georgia or North Carolina with Mark Robinson on the top of the ticket, I mean, he is an abomination. He's an anti-Semite. He's somebody that is beneath the office. I think Democrats have a unique chance to win there and actually, have a statewide candidate kind of carry the mantle.
I think that's right. And, North Carolina, if you look at the historical trend here, people are not ticket splitters like they used to be. 1988, you had 20 senators who were elected who were in the opposite party of the presidential candidate who won their state. In 2016, there was 0. 2020, there's 1, just Susan Collins. I think that in North Carolina, the problem for Trump is that you've got this insane candidate at the top of the ticket along with him, and it's just going to be such a drag. And I think it does put North Carolina on the map in a very serious way.
But you also have to think about, and to Bakari's point, the Democrats are going to now look at where do these primaries land, and where are their resources best spent to get the most bang for their buck as they head into the general election. And I can see where they would look at North Carolina as a place to do that. You also have to remember, we're going to see in the next week or two a major shift of the RNC. Out with Ronna McDaniels, in with a Whatley from North Carolina, in with Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, in with his campaign advisor, Chris LaCivita. The RNC is going to look at places like North Carolina, candidates that are very in support of Trump, that Trump supports. RNC is going to also put money in races that they might not have done in the past, but someone like Robinson, who has been so supportive of Trump, is going to get a lot of that support.
Yeah, but I mean, what do you think about that? Is that going to be a good thing? Because they can clean house and make those different decisions, but those could actually also be the wrong decisions.
Well, look, I'm just saying what I expect to see happen based on the way Donald Trump now has control of the party. And we have all seen how Donald Trump candidates have done in many of these races. Let's look at Herschel Walker. Let's look at Dr. Oz. Let's look at Kari Lake. They haven't been winning in the general election. They've been good in the primary, but not so much in the general election. I think it's a risky move, but I think it is inevitable that that's going to be the new face of the RNC, and that's what it's going to be.
I just want to raise one thing. This is on a bit of a separate topic, but we're now into Wednesday. It's technically Wednesday on the East Coast. Nikki Haley is going to face some real decisions, and CNN is reporting tonight that she called at least one of her donors that said she's not dropping out tonight, but that they're going to be reevaluating, coming up with whatever the next steps are today and in the days to come. What are the next steps here? How can she either gracefully exit this race, or does she try to keep it going, and for what?
She's not going to keep it going. How can she keep it going if we're watching tonight what Republican primary voters, again, math, going back to this whole overarching theme of math, she doesn't have it on her side. She already had the Koch brothers pull out of her campaign, and they said, hey, atta girl, we still support you, but you're not getting a paycheck. So there was one big donor. If another donor drops, the money's not going to be there. Where's the investment going to be made from the Haley campaign? I don't see it, Mark. I mean, you sound like...
Well, look, she raised $28 million in January and February, a little bit less in February than she did in January. The question is, how much money does she have? And, once she's out, she's gone. Like, she is... I can't see her running in 4 more years. I don't see the Republican...
Really?
No,
a lot of people think that that's actually what this is all about, that she wants to set herself up for another
No
run.
doubt that this is all about thinking that Donald Trump may trip and that she could step right in. But even if something does happen to Donald Trump, whether it's through the courts or whatever happens, I still don't see the Republican Party embracing Nikki Haley as the replacement for
Not the MAGA voters. If you saw that social media clip of that North Carolina voter and what he said that was so disgusting about Nikki Haley as a female and how he would never vote for somebody, you can go look up that clip if you want to. But that's the kind of voter that, to Mark's point, Nikki Haley has to message to.
And she's for Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley doesn't have a base of support. Everybody that's supporting Nikki Haley is doing it because she's not Donald Trump. She's more of a placeholder. I do think she's ambitious enough to run in 4 years. But I will tell you this. I know Nikki Haley very well. And for anybody up here who thinks that Nikki Haley is not going to endorse Donald Trump, they just have another thing coming. She is going to sit on and look in somebody's camera and say that he is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I work for him. And in 2 or 3 months, she's going to endorse him. Mark my words on that.
All right, guys, we got to call it a night. It's been great being with you all.
Can we go another hour?